I feel very strange speaking at this event because I think that humans are boring and I really don't know why I'm here. No disrespect to any of you, you're lovely, but analytically, they're really just not interesting. I study microbes. Microbes are vastly more interesting than humans are. It's not a fair comparison because microbe is a vast category of creature and humans are less vast in being a category. But the real point that I want to make today is that humans come with all kinds of expectations about why they're important and what they are that microbes don't. And therefore, microbes are a more interesting thing to think about when we're trying to figure out what kind of relationships are good to build. I'm a rhetorician of science. I'm in the English department and I'm in the microbiome cluster. So I study words as scientific tools, how words are constructive tools for making scientific knowledge. I mostly do that with engineering biology. Broadly speaking, applying engineering approaches to biological systems that often involves designing and building with DNA. So let's say that you're one of these folks and you decide that you want to design and build a re-engineered human genome. This happened in 2016. We shut down Jeff and George. We told them it was a bad idea, but they're still doing it now in Cambridge. The point is, though, that when that point, like when this whole thing came up, the conversations that were triggered were pretty stereotypical. They were good conversations. They were conversations about which genome's going to get built. Who's going to own it? What kinds of anticipated futures are built into that genome for whose benefit? All very good questions, but fundamentally framed, almost inevitably, through bioethics, with the assumption that the role of science here is to respect and support the well-being of an autonomous human individual. Now, you and me and our gut microbiomes could have a conversation about the validity and utility of imagining humans to be autonomous individuals. For my own part, I am a post-humanist, not a humanist. I think that we're all relational assemblages and multi-species accomplishments, and that really thinking about us as individuals is not constructive for reasons that Jenny and Ken have already pointed out. I don't have to do this anymore. I think it's so much more interesting to start with questions that come up when people say they want to engineer bacterial or fungal genomes, which happens all the time, because we have a lot broader questions about what kind of thing we're talking about and why it's useful, why it's important, what kind of relationship we think we might want to have with it. So, as Alyssa already mentioned, one of my current projects is called Microbiome-ish, and it's called Microbiome-ish because I want to know what kinds of things microbiomes are like. What's microbiome-ish? It's about the metaphors that scientists apply to making sense of microbiomes broadly around the question, if we know now that microbes form communities, what kinds of communities do they form? Are they more like wolf packs or towns or information networks, or are they all just sort of thrown together in a bucket? Now, one of the reasons why that question matters is because metaphors are design tools. To study microbiomes, we have to break them into bits. We have to destroy the very thing we're looking at and then try to reassemble the data that results from the experiments that folks do. So, in a sense, metaphors are like the picture on the top of the puzzle box. They're the image that you are trying to recreate because they're the thing you think you're looking at. They're what the thing you're looking at is like. As microbiomes are being engineered as technologies for really basically everywhere biology happens, agriculture, industry, biomedicine, space exploration, as these microbial communities are being engineered, we iteratively remake them in the images of our expectations about them. And consequently, the language that we use, the language that involves choices, those choices always involve values because there is no one right answer about what the microbiome is like. There are a whole plethora of choices. Consequently, metaphors are part of how values become built into these new biotechnologies. Now, of course, microbial biotechnology is being applied to human gut microbiomes, but again, I think the interesting ones are in industry. Right now, we're using microbial cell factories as the engines of the fourth industrial revolution of the new bioeconomy, as it's being put, where fossil fuel-driven petrochemistry is being replaced with engineered biology to make everything from the citrus aroma in your cleaning products to very fancy silk spider ties to cheese that's hopefully very ordinary, except for having been made with dairy proteins that have never seen the inside of a cow and were instead brewed in something that looks very much like they're making beer. Now, I think we should interrogate whether the sustainability promises being built into the bioeconomy are what we should be trying to sustain, because embedded in this system of replacing chemistry with biology is the assumption that we should continue to sustain production. And then we have to ask, where is the sugar coming from to feed all those microbes anyway, and how much of it is linked to deforestation and to food insecurity? But even in addition to all of those very important questions, I'm interested in how bioengineering invokes multi-species or more than human politics. We're talking about changing the kinds of relationships that humans have with other creatures, with microbes, which are, if the history of winemaking has anything to say about it, some of our very oldest domestic partnerships. And therefore, I also do a lot of things with wine, and therefore also like changing the kinds of humans we become. What does it mean to be an organism engineer in terms of the bigger picture of how humans and the rest of the multi-species world we inhabit interact? So a couple of years ago, I was at a conference at which the president of a multinational engineering biology company announced that now that scientists finally understood how life works, they could take up the rightful role as tech support for the planet. I am pleased to say that I think that statement was utterly reviled by everyone I talked to. None of the scientists there thought that they knew how life worked, and they certainly didn't think that they knew how to fix all of life's problems, which apparently we didn't solve. No, of course, we caused these in the first place. And yet, even here at CSU, and I love SOJUS dearly, but even here at CSU, the School of Global Environmental Sustainability runs a seminar series called Managing the Planet. I think managing is a terrible metaphor for sustainability because it suggests that some humans should have positions of authority over other creatures and well, probably also other humans. I want to approach the possibility of multi-species flourishing futures with more humility, generosity, and multi-species listening than that. So fundamentally, I think that we need better metaphors for multi-species science policy. I think that we need to be talking about weaving or lichens or metaphors that can only be told in the stories of indigenous peoples, things that emphasize how we're all moving in different directions but intersect in ways that are entirely intrinsic to our resilience together. I also think that me saying any of this is utterly absurd. I work in teams. Even with a large team, anything that we do is futile in the context of global hegemonies that invariably support the well-being of a very small subset of humans. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, even the language that I use so often works against me. Words are hilarious. They are constantly running off and doing things that I don't want them to do. They carry so much baggage. They're stories made up to support particular versions of the good, particular ideas of what we want to do with them. Cell factories are stories made up to support the notion that engineered biology can be slotted right into contemporary production systems without too much damage to the status quo. The human at the center of the humanities has so often been a fiction made up to support the notion that the Platonic ideal of a human is a cis white man. So I think that we need better vocabularies in addition to all of the other things that we need to address global socio-environmental disasters. And if I'm going to do that work, or try to do that work, I have to laugh my way through it. I can't take it seriously because I have to entertain the ridiculous. At some level, I have to entertain things that don't currently seem reasonable, plausible, or like they fit the status quo. So that's why I've been talking with my colleagues about earnest irony and why I run workshops about designing living room furnishings that might enable us to have more response-able conversations with other creatures in the interest of figuring out what responsible research looks like, instead of being responsible to things, being responsible with them. And why I write introductions to specialist issues of things that are visitors' guides to theme parks about the experience of trying to do interdisciplinary science policy research. Because at the end of the day, if what I'm trying to do is to open up space for counter-hegemonic futures, to be a wedge in the door, as my collaborator Jane Calvert often puts it, if I'm going to do that, then I have to entertain possibilities that don't currently fit in the room. Thanks.